Welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Again, another kind of flip-flop schedule holiday show tonight with obviously our typical Wednesday slot being both New Year's Eve and in the middle of a playoff game. So we didn't want to compete with that, obviously, although we probably would have garnered more viewership, but we thought we would do Miami and Ohio State a favor and just hold off on our live show. So thanks for joining us on a Friday night. We got a lot to get to tonight. Of course, the portal has opened officially, although it's been, people have been making an announcement for weeks. We've got 4 quarterfinal games to walk through, some of which were awesome, some of which weren't. And then a quick look at the semis. We'll be back next Wednesday before the semis officially kick off, so we'll do more in-depth stuff there. But thank you again for joining us. As always, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. We're growing over there, and we're still coming to you twice a week. We'll do that through the season. So we got a couple more weeks of our Monday, Friday cadence before we transition to our off-season once per week on Wednesdays cadence. But that is just a free newsletter. We keep you up to date with all things going on, first and foremost in the SEC, and then around college football as well. So would certainly appreciate you signing up for that, subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on social media, the whole spiel as usual. With that, boss man, how are you today?
Doing great, man. After watching that Ole Miss Georgia game last night, it got me fired up. I was ready to do a show tonight. Been a long hiatus here. We've been doing shows as we can, but kind of an odd schedule here. But, even just watching that game last night got me real fired up to talk some ball again. So excited to talk about it tonight. Lots of good football to talk about. Also some bad football to talk about. Sorry for those of you watching us in Tuscaloosa, but we will touch on that game. So lots to get into. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I feel like we should hop right into the quarterfinal games, and then we can go into portal and semis. Do you want to start with kind of the meh stuff, and then we can talk more longer form about the games that actually, showed us something on the field?
Yeah, I think so. Why don't we start with Oregon and Texas Tech, and then maybe we can go to Alabama after that one. But
yeah, there'll be a blowout in Bama, but there's plenty to say there. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we could start there. Then we could get to the best games, at least in terms of the score and just, watchability, I guess, if you want to call it that. But Oregon and Texas Tech, this one, honestly, it felt like from the jump just about Texas Tech was not going to be able to do anything on offense. Very quickly, it looked like Oregon had their number on offense or on defense when Oregon was on defense. And so watching this game, it kind of just felt excruciating. And I said it before the game, I think on Twitter, or maybe it was last week on the podcast, was that the Big 12 has been kind of, hey, we play big boy football over here. You guys disrespect us. Everybody disrespects the Big 12. Well, this was your shot. You got Texas Tech over here, who gets a bye in the first round and played well enough to do that. And then they go up against a Big 10 power in Oregon. Here's your shot. Here's your chance. And they lay a big fat egg. The defense played well enough to win this game. The defense, like we talked about going into this game, really freaking good for Texas Tech and definitely played well enough to win this game. The offense absolutely just wet the bed and completely let this team down. Baron Morton just played really a bad game. And you talked about it before this. I think it was off air, just us talking about it. But Baron Morton, it kind of felt like, yeah, he did some good things this year, but was he going to be good enough to get Texas Tech into the semifinal, potentially into a national championship game? Just kind of felt like he didn't have enough. And that really showed up against Oregon, who really exposed him, frankly, in this game. And for all that money Texas Tech spent, they spent money all over the field to bring a bunch of guys in to get that 4 seed. They didn't spend money on a quarterback, and they didn't get a quarterback, and stuck with the hometown kid. And truthfully, it came back to bite them in this one.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. I foolishly picked Texas Tech to cover. I wasn't quite sold on them winning outright, but because of that defense, I thought, man, they can be in this game.
Mhm.
It was just never meant to be. I mean, the story for me really, like, obviously the Texas Tech, offense was the issue. Give some credit, of course, to Oregon there for putting them in those situations and exposing them. But you turn the ball over 4 times and you lose by 23 points. Like, again, just look at it. If you're just box score watching, Oregon had 309 total yards. The Tech defense came to play and did everything they could while constantly just being put in terrible situations. I mean, Oregon was 4 of 19 on third down. They went 4 of 8 on fourth, which is kind of crazy. But, it's not like the Oregon offense was lighting it up. They averaged 1.4 yards a carry. Like, the Oregon run game was not doing anything. Dante Moore had a solid game and, carried them for the most part offensively. But, yeah, it was just a story of Tech had a really good defense, and they finally ran up against a really good defense on the other side, and their offense was not capable, was not prepared to handle that. I mean, Morton was sacked 4 times. Like, Oregon was just kind of overpowering them on that side of the ball, and Tech didn't have an answer on the ground or through the air. So it was kind of, like you said, they had spent a lot of money, but didn't find a quarterback. And I don't know how much Baron Morton made. He'd been there for a while. Obviously, like you said, kind of the hometown kid. I suspect, not just because I think he's done with his eligibility, but because of how that game went, they will spend big at that position this offseason. So I don't think, I said this in the newsletter, I don't think we've seen the last of Texas Tech in this on this stage because of the money that they have. I mean, there was I think we put it last week in the newsletter, a read of the week about the Cody Campbell Tech Booster Board of Regent and College Sports Commission member, whatever that even means. They're here to stay. I think Joey McGuire did a phenomenal job. I mean, that was something coming into the year people talked about, right? Was, hey, all right, cool. You spent all this money. Is Joey McGuire really the guy? Can he coach? Can he bring this team together? And I'm not here to tell you he's a top 5 coach in the sport, but I think he earned some respect this season in, getting a lot of talent. But he turned his talent, into an 11-1 regular season and Big 12 titles. So until further notice, I think the Big 12 runs through Lubbock, and we'll see if they can, take the steps needed to compete on this stage in the CFP. But I don't think the Red Raiders are done, by any stretch in terms of getting to this point. Time will tell if they can put together a roster that's good enough to get past this point.
I'll say this too. I think, Joey McGuire, before I say this, I don't think Joey McGuire is Curt Cignetti. But to make a little comparison here, Cignetti goes to the playoff last year and gets absolutely trounced. And everybody's like, oh, Indiana didn't belong. Curt Cignetti doesn't really have it. He's just, he was playing in the Big Ten. He had a weak schedule, all this stuff, right? Well, year 2, what does he do? Goes back into the portal. What did he do? He got himself a quarterback. He got himself Fernando Mendoza, who won a Heisman. He got a couple other key pieces and ended up where they are now, which is in the semifinal and looking like a bona fide national title contender. So I say that because this was Texas Tech's first time in the College Football Playoff. Everybody's doing what everybody did to Indiana last year, which is dogging them and saying, oh, these guys they played this weak Big 10 or Big 12 schedule. They're not very good. Joey McGuire doesn't really have it. As soon as they get on the big stage, they're frauds. So the same things that were being said about Indiana last year are now being said about Texas Tech. And I am with you. I don't think this is their last time on this stage because of the Big 12, the conference they play in. And again, we talk about it all the time. Everybody who watches college football knows this. Just quickly, if you've watched the game for 1 year, you can understand this. It comes down to quarterback play. If you've got a very good quarterback, you've got a very good chance. And I mean, that's why Vanderbilt was 10-2 this year. Vanderbilt without Diego Pavia is not 10-2, right? So at the end of the day, you've got to have a great quarterback to take you to great heights. And Texas Tech didn't have that this year. And so I think Joey McGuire and Cody Campbell and all the rest of them, they're going to go out and spend big on a quarterback this year. There's a lot of good ones in the portal. So I think they're going to go get one, maybe Mini Mahomes, Dylan Raiola, put on the shades. But even aside from that, I do think that they will get a quarterback in this portal cycle. They're going to spend big again. They got plenty of money. Until somebody puts a cap on it, I think that Texas Tech is going to be in this and really be a factor in the college football playoff for a couple years to come until we get some caps and some guardrails against NIL in college sports.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just wanted to throw up this comment here from our friend Mike Huseman of Off Season After Dark. I kind of agree. Like I said, this game felt extremely lopsided. But then you look up at the score and it's, 23-0, like, lopsided on one hand. But again, Oregon's offense was just not quite, to Texas Tech's credit, not quite able to really, capitalize. It was just one of those games where Lanning could kind of do no wrong because his defense wasn't going to allow anything. But I agree, he was aggressive, and that is unlikely to be sustainable against Indiana. They're going to have to play a better ball game, which I think takes us into a nice transition here into the Indiana game. I don't know if our good friend Rick, Captain Biscuit, big time Roll Tide Roll Bama fan, is tuned in. He hasn't commented tonight.
Where are you at, Rick?
So Rick, I hope you're doing all right, man. That was a tough one for the Crimson Tide. There's a lot to get through in this game, but I want to just start out and say, as I said in the newsletter this morning, this Indiana Kurt Cignetti story is one of the coolest and craziest sports stories, not even just college football, of the last 20 years, 40 years. I don't really know how to rank it, categorize it. And I also don't, want to just simply be a prisoner of the moment with this recency bias. But like, Indiana football just beat Alabama 38-3 in the college football playoff, who, by the way, Indiana was favored going into the game. They are number one. They are undefeated. It makes no sense. And it's just such a testament to two things. One, first and foremost, Cignetti, just as a coach, as a leader, what he is able to do to get that team that talent-wise, I know they're doing it on the field. I still think, like, what do they call it? A blind resume, right? Where it's like, if you were to take, an NFL scout or a college GM or whatever, and run these two teams out onto the field with blank all-white jerseys and go through warm-ups, they're probably going to say, we want that team, and that team's Alabama. It's not Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And despite that, they beat them 38-3. And the other thing, we can get into this more later perhaps, but the other thing I think, this is a testament to is not just Cignetti and what he's able to do as a coach, but also the changing landscape in college football, because the transfer portal has allowed him to build the roster that he wants in 2 years. That obviously wasn't the case in years gone by. And he's making $12+ million a year now as the coach at Indiana, which 20 years ago, there's not a chance, in the state of Indiana that they're paying their football coach that much, because they didn't care, right? But now with NIL, they have a big alumni base, they have plenty of money, and tradition is kind of out the window in some respects. I mean, look at the Final Four, right? Not to say that Miami doesn't have tradition or Oregon doesn't have tradition, but Oregon's kind of a new kid on the block as far as that stuff is concerned. Like, it's not your grandpa's college football anymore, where it's only going to be the same 5 to 10 teams every year that have a chance to win it. And so that's kind of outside of what actually went down on the field, those were kind of my takeaways. What about you?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could go with it. I mean, I think you're right, though. The first place you have to start is Signetti. I think it's in a category of its own, frankly. I mean, folks can help us in the comments. Look, I'm a college football historian, traditionalist, amateur, of course, but I love the history of the game. I love reading about college football. I've followed this stuff for my entire life, and I can't think of another story that is like this, where a coach goes and in 2 years flips a dormant, one of the worst, historical programs in the country into a national title contender.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they are the most losing program in history. They have lost the most games in history because they've been playing forever and they've never been good.
I think you're probably right. Somebody can check us. I know it's bad. I know it is very bad. And so he comes in and he does what he is doing at Indiana. I don't think that there's nothing you can compare it to, in my opinion. Right? It's just so. Help me out. I'm sure there's somebody who could come in and say, well, it was this guy in like the 1950s or something, or the 1960s, but nothing comes to mind for me in terms of what Signetti has been able to do. I mean, what they did to Alabama, we talked about it before the game, which was that in previewing this, Signetti and Indiana look like Saban and Alabama. Like when Saban had all those teams at Alabama, this is what they look like at Indiana right now. And Alabama doesn't really look like that. They don't have the Death Star of old when, you were worried when they came off the bus. Like you looked across the field and you were like, my gosh, those guys are massive. Those guys are fast. Like that quarterback can rip the ball, all of it. And Indiana has that factor a little bit now. Because for whatever reason with Signetti, even if they don't have the talent, they are disciplined. They're not going to beat themselves, and you're going to have to beat them. And that's really not Alabama right now. And we saw it in this game, 38-3. I mean, there was nothing that Alabama could say. I mean, I told you this off air. I was getting texts from a couple of my Notre Dame friends like, oh, yeah, Alabama shouldn't have been in the playoff. Like, what about Notre Dame? Like I said, of course, I don't think Notre Dame should have been anyway, whatever. But I think you quickly forget that Alabama won a first-round playoff game. But aside from that, they got handled in this game. Indiana outgained Alabama by over 200 yards. Alabama had, what was it, like 20-something rushing yards in this game? It's like 29 rushing yards or something insane.
23 rushing yards.
23 rushing yards, 17 rushing attempts, 1.4 yards per rush. They knew that they weren't going to be able to run the ball very well. They haven't run the ball very well all year, so they knew they were going to have to try and pass their way to a win. But even still, Indiana only gives up 170 passing yards. And they moved the ball. I mean, they controlled the line of scrimmage. They were the more physical team. They were running the ball kind of with ease as the game started to go on. They were even getting chunk plays in the first half. I mean, 192 yards passing, 215 yards rushing. That's supposed to be Alabama. Alabama does that to teams, not Indiana. So it just amazed me what I saw at the Rose Bowl. Signetti obviously took a lot from when he learned under Coach Saban. Because, I mean, we'll show this a little later, foreshadowing, but when Alabama tried to get them offsides on that fourth down and did the hard count, and Indiana didn't go for it because they're a very disciplined team. And then the camera cuts to Signetti, and he's just got this scowl on his face, and he's like, oh, I can't believe they thought that they were going to get us offsides on that. That was Saban back in the day. And Signetti too, they showed him later in the game. It's 38-3 or 31-3 or whatever it was. They cut the camera to him at some point, and he's like talking into his mic, and he's obviously not very happy about something. And that's how Saban always was. Saban's coaching him up against ULM when it's 51-3, So this team looks like Alabama. I think they are here to stay, frankly, because now the word is out. Like, Signetti, Google him. He wins, and he has done it at Indiana. He has backed up every word that he has said since coming to Indiana, and all the bravado and all the swagger and all that sort of stuff. He's backing up every single word of it. And so now kids are going to want to come to Bloomington. Like it was like, okay, you did it once. Can you do it again? He's doing it again. Not only is he doing it again, he's doing it better than he did the first iteration. So I think there's more coming of this for the foreseeable future. And the last thing I'll say, I've seen a few people out there talk about this, but I think it's true. And I kind of want to reiterate it is that, look, Alabama's got to figure something out. They're soft. They're soft. They're the soft team right now. They got bullied by Indiana when they have more talent. So I don't know whether it's on defense, if you got to look at making a staff change. On offense, they look pretty milquetoast, benign. Like they're not scary. And they can't run the freaking ball. That's not Alabama football. And I know that I think it was Nick Kelly actually who pointed this out. Nick Grubb got fired after 1 year in the NFL because his rushing offense in the NFL, one of the worst in the NFL. And now this is carrying over to Alabama. And so I don't know what Kalen DeBoer needs to do. I think there needs to be some changes here, but they're not mean. People do not fear them, and they really are soft right now. So those were my takeaways from this one.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And that's evidenced by, you brought up the fact that, outside of this game where it was painfully obvious who the more physical team was, they couldn't run the ball all year. So that wasn't just a one game sample size of Alabama getting bullied. Like you said, it was a full season kind of them being soft at the point of attack, at least on offense. Now, defensively, I think they were pretty good for the most part this season. And they even got after Indiana early. It's just one of those things you brought up earlier, having an elite quarterback. I mean, dude, Fernando Mendoza was surgical. 14 of 16. He only threw the ball 16 times, and they put up 38 points. But 14 of 16, 3 touchdowns, 192 yards, no turnovers, more touchdowns than incompletions. But they did get bullied on the ground, and that's crazy. I mean, again, Indiana just put up 38 points on Alabama, and the quarterback of Indiana threw the ball 16 times. They ran the ball 50 times because Alabama wasn't stopping them. Just like, hey, dude, we're going to run it down your throat, and we're going to pick our spots with a very accurate Heisman Trophy winning NFL caliber quarterback, and we're going to dissect you. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep ripping off chunks of yardage on the ground because you can't stop it. You can't, we're going to man up against you. And that was the crazy thing. I mean, it is what it is, but, and I'm not even going to actually, I'm not going to blame Alabama for this, but as you said, Indiana looks like Alabama and does what, Alabama did for so long. And part of what Alabama did for so long was break teams' will.
Yes.
And Indiana broke their will because of that, because defensively, Alabama was getting bullied at the point of attack, and Indiana was just running it down their throat. And then when they, did choose to pass, very effective. It broke the Alabama's will on defense. And then on offense, the same thing. Alabama had nowhere to go. Nothing was working. Ty Simpson breaks a rib. I mean, they're just getting pounded into oblivion, and their will was broken. They, I think, pretty early on knew, we're outmatched. We are outgunned, outmatched. And I've heard a few people mention this, and these are, people that watch film, right? Which is not you and I. And they've talked about Indiana, and the obvious thing that we've brought up, of course, even coming into this game, is Indiana doesn't beat themselves, right? They're number one now in the country in turnover margin. But the other thing that I've heard people saying, which, I have to assume is true because, A, they're again watching tape, but B, you see it play out in real time in these games. And that is, especially on defense, what's his name? Bryant Haynes, I believe, is the D coordinator, who's a longtime Signetti guy, was with him at Elon, JMU, and now Indiana. They're especially second level and even front level, the defensive line. Their read and react time is like that. They are always in the right spot. They are not missing gaps in the run game. They're just not giving you anything. You're always going to have to run through them or just beat them one-on-one, because they're not going to be out of position. They are, immediately, because of their preparation, they're going to know what you're trying to do. And again, at that point, it just becomes, okay, can you block us, or can you beat us one-on-one? Because we know what you're doing. And it, again, just comes down to, the one-on-one matchups, and Indiana's winning them, to their credit. But it's just such a testament to that staff, how well they play as a unit, how they're always in the right spot. They always know what's coming. You brought up the fourth down. Like, they're just not fooled by anything you try to do. And especially in college football, that is such a weapon if you possess it, and then such a pain in the butt for teams trying to face you, because you look at all these prolific offenses in college football, especially college football, like, a lot of what they rely on are those big chunk plays, because they scheme somebody open, they confuse you, or you just have a busted coverage because it's college football. You got a 19-year-old or 18-year-old out there who, it's supposed to be cover 3. He vacates to the flat, and his third of the field's wide open. Not Indiana. They don't do it. So if you're going to, like we said going into the game, if you're going to beat them, you have to take it, because they're not going to give an inch. And that was, never more obvious as in this game, because they were everywhere all the time, and Alabama had absolutely no answer for it. And it was just a masterclass of, execution, preparation, and domination in the college football playoff. Just an unbelievable performance from them.
I mean, everything that you just described in that last 30 seconds, you could just insert here on any year during the Saban era at Alabama. I mean, it literally sounds like you're talking about the Nick Saban teams at Alabama, and Cignetti has brought that to Bloomington, and that's what they're doing to teams now. They don't beat themselves. They're in the right position. Every single week, they're going to be the best prepared team on the field. And I think very soon, Indiana is going to be able to match up with just about anybody in terms of talent too. Right now, they're out scheming folks, they're out preparing people, and they're not beating themselves. So all those things, and they're disciplined, all of that. So all of that has helped. They're already beating teams like Alabama and Ohio State and everybody. They might even just win the whole dadgum thing this year. Very possible. And if they do that, Cignetti's about to go on a crazy run, because they're about to get, even aside from winning a national title this year, no matter how much further they go in this playoff, a bunch of talent is about to come to Bloomington. Because if I'm a kid who's going into the transfer portal, you best believe Indiana is at the top of my list, because I want to play for the best. I want to play for championship caliber coaches. Cignetti is a championship caliber coach, and I want to go play in the NFL. And you know who got kids into the NFL? Nick Saban. You know who looks like the most like Nick Saban right now? Kurt Cignetti. So there's about to be a talent influx into Bloomington, and they're only going to get better. So I'm interested to see how the rest of this playoff goes for them. I'm also interested to see what happens with Alabama. I mean, I know it sounds a little crazy, but it's Alabama, and this is not the standard at Alabama. The standard is championships. So I think the seat is starting to get a little warm for Kalen DeBoer here, especially with the way they look. I said it. They look soft. They're soft. They need to figure that out. And so if they look like that again next year, I'm telling you, the seat is white hot. And so some changes need to be made here in the offseason. I'm interested to see what changes DeBoer makes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're about half an hour in, so let's transition to our next game. We'll get to the nightcap last night last. So we'll start with the Ohio State Miami game, which, what a game. What an upset for Miami. I mean, they were 9.5, 10-point dogs as this one kicked off. Coming into it, everyone still had, or not everyone, but the betting odds market had Ohio State still as the favorite. And Miami just took it to them in a very similar fashion to what they did against A&M. What was your takeaways from this one?
Well, first of all, I'll lead with this. Everybody except for Kurt Cignetti. Kurt Cignetti is in his own category at this point, but anybody else, if they get a bye in the first round, bet against them, because I think it's 1-7 at this
Yeah.
point for
Yeah.
teams who have gotten a bye in the first round. They're getting too much time off. Dan Lanning talked about it in his post-game press conference. He even talked about it pregame before the Texas Tech game.
Yeah, he did.
There's too much time off. This calendar does not make sense. It's not right. Teams should be trying to get a bye, right? That's how it is in the NFL. I don't want to be like the NFL. I don't want to make college football exactly like the NFL, but the NFL does it right in this sense where you're not sitting out forever. What is it? Basically a month that you're sitting out until you go to that bye, you get past your bye and then you play your game. That's ridiculous. These teams can't get into a rhythm. They kind of get out of a rhythm, right? It's a very weird schedule that they have to figure out in terms of how much rest do we give? How much do we practice? Like whatever leading up to that game. We don't know who the opponent's going to be, all that. So you should be wanting to play for a bye. And it doesn't make sense right now because all these teams are getting beat. Now, that's not to say, boo-hoo, I'm sorry that I'm, Georgia. I'm sorry, Kurt Cignetti did it, right? So I'm not boo-hooing it, too much, but I do think that there is something there. 1-7 data speaks for itself. The teams who have played a game, who have some momentum, who are back in the rhythm of playing, who play earlier, they're the ones getting the wins. 1-7 speaks for itself. So I think there's something there. Now, it was a fascinating game. It really did play out. We were talking about it at halftime when it was 14-0. Like, my gosh, this game looks so much like the Miami Texas A&M game. Miami's defense was playing very, very well in that first half, and really throughout most of the game. But and Miami scores one offensive touchdown, and the only reason they get to 14 is because they got a pick six where Keontae Scott just read it from the get-go. He's obviously saw that one on tape. He's a fifth year. He's been around for a long time. Former, Auburn guy. Like this guy, he's a baller. And so he saw that on film. They knew it. They saw the key, whatever it was, and he just jumped it and went for 6. So, Miami gets that. It's 14-0, but it's still, Ohio State is eking stuff out on offense in the first half, just grinding. And Miami's having trouble on offense too. So yes, it looked very much like a mirror, at least through the third quarter of that Miami Texas A&M game. I think, look, I hate a loss still, but as an Aggie fan, everybody calling A&M fraud, this, fraud, that. I think we kind of saw that Miami's defense is seriously legit. Like this Ohio State team is very good. They're one of the best offenses in the country. And Miami, held them to 14 points. So, not necessarily vindication, but a little bit of like, okay, we got by a team that was really freaking good on defense. If you're an A&M fan, so that was one takeaway from it. The other one I thought too. I think there was 2 things that really put Miami over the hump, at least on offense, and one of them was Carson Beck did not turn the ball over. Right, Miami had 1 turnover. They had a fumble, but in terms of interceptions, no interceptions from Carson Beck. That has been their Achilles heel. When Miami has issues, Carson Beck has turned the ball over. So I thought that was a big deal. The other thing too was third down efficiency. Miami was 50% on third down on the night. They were 7 of 14. On the other side, you had Ohio State. They were 3 of 10 on third down. So Miami was getting off the field. Ohio State was having a little more trouble getting off the field, right? And Miami was able to sustain their drives a little bit better. So great win by Miami. I mean, they could win it too, man. I mean, you got a veteran quarterback. You've got some great talent on the outside that you can utilize. You've got a great running back. Your offensive line is playing well. Like Miami could be the one that, gets hot, right? And ends up winning this next game and getting into the title game. And from there, all bets are off, right? So credit to Mario Cristobal and what they've been able to do. Thought it was a great win. One thing on the other side for Ohio State, I think they need to fire Ryan Day. But all kidding aside, I do think it's interesting, right? We talked about this throughout the year. Who did Ohio State play? Ohio State doesn't play Indiana until the Big Ten championship. They play Michigan, who was like 9-3 or whatever.
Yeah, I think they played Iowa.
Iowa, okay, and then they played Texas at the start of the year and they beat Texas. And everybody knows those guys are frauds. So I'm just making everybody mad tonight.
Well,
but jokes aside, again, right? Their schedule, like who did they kind of play? And then people were making this argument about Texas A&M, right? Okay, who did they play? They played the bottom tier of the SEC through their schedule. Then it came time, like when the lights are on, when you're playing against some of the best competition you played all year. Boom. Honorary member of the thank you, Andy. Man. I do identify with the lunatic fringe of the Ohio State fan base. But don't fire him. He just won a national title. I'm only joking. But so A&M, their last two games, they play the best competition they play all year. How do they look? They look terrible, right? They look like kind of like a joke, frankly. And that narrative ended up playing out. Well, for Ohio State, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's a very, parallel narrative there where it's like, okay, you played Texas, you get Iowa in the middle of the year, and then you don't play really your best competition until the Big Ten championship game and then in the first round of the playoff. And what happens? You get got, and what did they score? I can't remember. They scored 10 against Indiana or whatever.
10,
they scored 10 championship game, and you score 14 with an offense that's supposed to be really dadgum good. Julian Sands, a Heisman, contender, all this stuff, and you fall flat. And so I do think in part that the schedule matters. It really does. And I'm not saying, Ohio State can't totally control their schedule. A lot of that's the Big Ten. And just the way that it shakes out. But I think you got to play some dogs, man. I think you want to play some dogs. I mean, look at what's going on right now with like Ole Miss. Ole Miss played some dogs in the middle of the year. In fact, they played the dogs in the middle of the year. They took them to the brink. Ole Miss had some games where they really had to squeak it out, right, and really like push. Mainly that Georgia game. Miami had some tough games, in the middle of the year. They lost some games they shouldn't have lost. So anyway, all I'm saying is there's something there. Like, I think you need to play a tougher schedule if you can, right? Sometimes it's just who's in front of you. But I do think that matters. It mattered for A&M. It's mattered now for Ohio State. And I think that's just a trend that we will continue to see. If you don't play, some tougher teams during the season, you kind of fall flat.
Yeah, no, that's very possible. I think, what I was thinking in watching this game, if you remember back to really September, kind of before Miami, I guess, lost to Louisville and then SMU, and even a few weeks leading into that, they hadn't looked as dominant. But early on in the season, when they, took out Notre Dame, they went to Florida State when people still thought Florida State was at least decent. And there was a lot of people saying like, hey man, this Miami team is different, physically speaking, they are different. Mm-hmm. And for the second week in a row, that, came to bear because they were extremely physical. Our friend, Andy Man here says that the Miami D line is insane, and they are. They whipped A&M's offensive line and they whipped Ohio State's. They had 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. And then again, to give Miami, credit, similar to what we just said about Indiana, man, they were the more physical team. Ohio State ran for 45 yards. Miami ran for 153. Also very similar to the A&M game. A lot of that came late, right? Miami is clinging to a 17-14 lead after the Jeremiah Smith touchdown. They exchange punts. Miami gets the ball back like 11 minutes, or no, not 11, like midway through the fourth, like 8 minutes to go in the fourth. And you're like, okay, guys, hey, 17-14, Ohio State's kind of got the momentum. They've, outscored you 14-3 in the second half. Like, you got to do it here. And what do? Man, they freaking ran it down their throat. I put this in the newsletter, so I'm not going to get the exact, or here, I'll pull it up real quick. But that drive that they ended up scoring a touchdown with under a minute to go to extend the lead to 10 and, ice the game. Let me get it pulled up here because I want to see. So it was a 70-yard touchdown drive, 10 plays. It was 52 of that was rush yards. So the bulk of that was on the ground, just man football, right? Hey, season on the line. We got to at least get a field goal out of this. What are we going to do? We're going to run it down your throat with Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown, who didn't touch the ball, hardly all game. And he comes up with some big runs. It's just impressive. And I love what you said about Carson Beck too, because that guy, he's been ridiculed a lot on social media in particular. I think
me.
Yeah, sure. And you brought up, the turnovers, but in both of these games, the A&M game and this game, you look, and this is going to be a crazy comparison because by no stretch of the imagination is Carson Beck remotely like Tom Brady. But when I make that comparison, it's that, in those big games, there are so many times when the Patriots would win and you would look at Tom Brady's stats and be like, well, he didn't really do that much, but they won and he took care of the ball. And that's the second game in a row where, statistically speaking, Beck, very pedestrian. He threw for 138 yards and a touchdown, but he was 19 to 26, so he was efficient. He was completing passes. He had a couple of really clutch first down runs. And again, he looked like a veteran. He looked like a guy who knew what he needed to do. He knew his defense was going to ball out just like Brady always knew. And he's like, okay, I know the assignment, and he gets an A, right? Again, I'm sure if you asked him or, looking at the stats, you're like, oh, it'd have been nice if he threw for 250 and 2 TDs instead of 130 and 1. But, the guy's just winning games, and he's making winning plays when it counts down the stretch. I mean, that run that he had on third down where he lowers the shoulder, I'm just like, dang, man, I didn't know you had it in you, to be honest. We've ridiculed him, plenty of people have, and I just think if you're box score watching, you will not be impressed with what he's done through 2 games. But if you watched both of those games, especially how they were going, I think he deserves a ton of credit for handling the moment, making plays when they needed him most, and just managing the game and not turning it over, right? Saying through a pick 6 cost his team 7 points. Carson Beck didn't cost his team a point, knew his defense could bail him out. They did. And you move on with a 10-point win over the favorite in the tournament. So it was impressive. I don't have a ton to say about Ohio State, honestly. I think your point about the schedule is totally fair. And I think, you brought it up. Look, they lost to a really good Miami team. Our A&M lost to a really good Miami team. Miami could win the whole thing. And the Ohio State machine will continue to run. And one thing on the Ohio State front that I will point out that's not a shot at them by any stretch of the imagination, but something that we as Aggies dealt with. Ryan Day took over play calling again, and he hadn't been calling plays all year. And I think he's a good play caller. I mean, he called plays for a long time and had great offenses, but that's just a tough thing to deal with as a staff when you've got a guy who takes another job, gets promoted, and with Hartline going to USF, I know Hartline was still there, but Day, I don't know what the right decision is there, right? A&M left Colin Klein in charge, had a terrible offensive outing. And in Ohio State's case, Day took it back over and said, hey, I'm going to, take this off your plate. You're doing 2 things at once. I'll handle it. And Ohio State didn't look great on offense. But I do think most of that is credit to Miami's defense. But, I do think that's at least worth pointing out, especially when Miami, correct me if I'm wrong, their coordinators aren't taking other jobs. Indiana coordinators aren't taking other jobs, so not that that's perfect and the only recipe, but I do think it can matter. And it looked like it mattered a little bit in that one.
I agree. Well, one thing too, I just want to mention this here. So King Keithius, thanks for the sub, man. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in tonight. One thing he was mentioning here, Backfoot Beck is just a game manager. He's a Georgia fan, so he says he's a little bit salty. So I understand that.
Well, and I'll be honest, that's a fair criticism, especially again, like that's all Beck has done in these 2 playoff games, as I was trying to point out, like complete game manager, pedestrian numbers. But again, it's, do you understand the assignment? And a lot of times, especially if you have a defensive line, a defense like Miami, the assignment is that, hey, dude, just don't screw it up. And a lot of times, dudes can't do that. Beck, a lot of times, has not been able to do that. But for 2 games in a row, he's done it. And he's come up with a few big plays when they needed him. This is a crazy comparison, but people said that about Brady for years, right? Oh, he's just a game manager. He's a system quarterback. Belichick and the defense lead the team, which they did. But you still got to have the right guy under center who's going to be able to make smart football plays at the right time. And through 2 games, Beck has been doing that. It's quite possible the turnover bug comes back out down the road, but so far, you win 2 playoff games, man. I especially on the road at A&M and then against the favorite. Like, I think you got to give him a little bit of credit, even though his numbers aren't great.
But one other thing I want to mention before we move on here. So King Keithius says this: Miami defense is the only reason they're relevant. I tend to agree with you here, especially through 2 games. I mean, there's no way they win that A&M game without the way that defense played. I mean, the A&M offense absolutely, peed down their leg, as we all know. But aside from that, I mean, the A&M defense played incredible, right? Like that Miami offense played terrible, and that A&M defense played very, very well, even with short fields. Miami had short fields so much of the day because A&M's offense was playing so badly, and the Miami defense was playing so well. One thing I just wanted to mention here, though, is that there's going to be some holes. There's going to be some openings against Ole Miss. Ole Miss gives up some points. I expect much more of a back and forth. Carson Beck with his experience. They don't have a ton. I mean, it's Malachi Toney, right? I mean, it's like Malachi Toney. CJ Daniels had 5 receptions for 49 yards against Ohio State. Marion had 5 for 35. Like, their weapons on the outside really don't scare me that much, except for Malachi Toney. Malachi Toney scares the bejesus out of me if I'm a defensive coordinator. But there's going to be openings against Ole Miss. So I'm interested to see if Carson Beck is able to find them, if Fletcher is able to run the ball effectively against Ole Miss, and then that opens up some lanes and some openings and some holes for Carson Beck to hit downfield. I expect Miami to score more points against Ole Miss than they have in the last couple of games. And I think Ole Miss can keep up with them. We'll get into that game in a minute. But, yeah, I think that's just something I wanted to mention there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, well, let's King Keithius. I don't think we'll make you too mad, but we will go into your game. We haven't touched on it yet. This was just a absolute barn burner. Such a fun Sugar Bowl. The atmosphere was nuts, as it always. I mean, if you're 2 SEC teams playing in the Sugar Bowl, it's going to be packed. It's going to be a frenzy. And just what a game in all aspects. I definitely felt like when the fumble return for a touchdown happened, you're like, all right, here we go. Georgia's kind of gonna put the clamps on them, and then Trinidad Chambliss just said, nah, not tonight. I mean, that was a heroic quarterback performance by him. I don't really have anything negative to say about Georgia. I think they just lost to a quarterback that's playing out of his mind, or at least in that 60 minutes played out of his mind. So what were your takeaways from the Sugar Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, just where you started, right? It's like I was having so much fun watching this game. It just back and forth and the quarterback duel. And as we have talked about many times on this show, go back and watch our shows from the preseason. Both you and I, we've been hammering this, no pun intended. Biscuits and SEC has been on the Gunnar Stockton train from the very start. A lot of folks in the national media, before we got into this season, we're kind of meh. We don't know about Gunnar Stockton. We'll see. I don't think he's got it. I mean, Paul Feinbaum said that. Multiple people said that. From the start, we have been on his train saying, no, we think this kid's a dog. He's got it in him, and he's going to be a stud. And he has been a stud all year. And he was a stud again in this game against Ole Miss. It just so happened that they ran into Trinidad Chambliss, who outplayed him. and is outplaying basically everyone at this point in the season. Some of the throws that Trinidad Chambliss made, I mean, multiple throws that he made in that game, especially late in the game, were absolute dimes. They were perfect, on the money throws. Just very, very impressive what Trinidad Chambliss was able to do. I mean, that guy, he 30 of 46 for 362 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kawan Lacey gets 2 touchdowns. He's got 98 yards on the ground. It was a very, very impressive showing from Trinidad Chambliss. And Gunnar Stockton played very well too. 18 of 31, 203 yards, 1 TD. Could he have played a little bit better? Sure, he could have. But he absolutely gave Georgia a chance to win this game. Trinidad Chambliss just outplayed him, and the Georgia defense wasn't able to make stops when they needed it the most. I was sitting there watching this game with our younger brother, Chuck Biscuit. And when Georgia got the ball in the fourth quarter and they were about to drive down, I looked at him, I said, Georgia's going to go down and score. They're going to score this ball right now. Like, I guarantee it. And that's exactly what happened, because Georgia, with Kirby Smart at this point in his tenure, that's how you feel. There's some coaches where, it's just like they're going to score. There's some coaches, teams, players, right, when it all comes together, and programs where you just kind of sit back and you're like, if they get the ball in that situation, and it's happened multiple times this year already for Georgia, including against Ole Miss earlier in the season, where you just kind of sit back. It's like, if they get the ball in the situation, you just know it. They're going to go score. Well, the truth of the matter was that Ole Miss is at that point as well. You got the ball in Trinidad Chambliss's hands. You give them enough time on the clock, you're sitting there thinking, Ole Miss is going to score. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Georgia leaves too much time on the clock, just enough time on the clock for Ole Miss to give the ball, put it in Trinidad Chambliss's hands, and he makes the play that you need to make. And then you've got a kicker who can boot it all the way from the moon or from Moron Mountain and hit it from anywhere on the field. And yeah, you're going to win this game. So I thought it was very impressive the way that Ole Miss played in this game. Ole Miss, overall, it wasn't by a lot, but they outplayed Georgia in this game. And I was very impressed. One thing to mention, and then I'll let you get into your thoughts, is Pete Golding, man. You got to give that guy his flowers. I mean, everything that has gone on surrounding this team with Lane Kiffin, the drama, the this, the that, the back and forth with the coaches. Are they tampering? Are these kids going to go in the portal? Like, there has been so much noise and craziness, and this program has been in the middle of a tornado for the last month and a half as Lane Kiffin waffled on what he was going to do. And Pete Golding comes in here, and you got to give him all the credit in the world for, just circling the wagons, working with the troops, and just saying, trust me, follow me, we're going to get this done. And damned if he didn't, man. I mean, he walks into the Sugar Bowl, a full Sugar Bowl. The environment was incredible, and gets a win and has Ole Miss looking like they could win a national title, which, by the way, I hope they do. I hope they do. Lane Kiffin, all the stuff that he did, we did a whole bunch of talk about that in previous shows if folks want to go back and watch them. But how awesome would it be for Ole Miss to go win a national title now after Lane Kiffin left them at the doorstep of the prom, and he goes to LSU because he thinks, I can't win a national title at Ole Miss, which he hasn't said that, but implicitly that's what he's saying. I can't win a title at Ole Miss. LSU has more resources. We're going to be able to win titles at LSU. I can't do it at Ole Miss. If Ole Miss goes and does it, and Pete Golding does it with the roster that Kiffin constructed, it would be an awesome story. And just kind of like a little bit of a, you know what? Thank goodness. Like, we got that snake out of the grass. He's now in Baton Rouge, and we won a title without him, and we can do it again. And I think that would also speak to the new era of college football, as we're seeing in Bloomington with Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Maybe we're seeing it right now with Ole Miss. We're seeing it at these different Texas Tech. Like, you don't have to have Alabama on your chest. You don't have to have LSU. You don't have to have Ohio State on your chest to win big in college football anymore. At least during this window, while NIL is crazy and so much money can be poured into it, you can win anywhere. Any Power 4 school, Indiana, you can win big and you can go to a national title game. You can get deep in the college football playoff. So anyway, those are my thoughts. What an incredible game. It was so much fun to watch this game. I'm sorry to Georgia fans that somebody had to lose this game. But man, one for the ages, a quarterback duel for the ages, and one that I can't wait to watch again in the offseason when it comes on SEC Network, midday in July.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, to give, what you said, I think ultimately this did come down to just the quarterbacks, and Trinidad slightly outplayed Stockton, which is basically the inverse of what we saw in Athens back in October. But Stockton played a good game. He had 3 touchdowns because 2 of those came on the ground, and he was also getting lit up, dude. I mean, absolutely rocked over and over again.
Yeah.
And, again, to me, that was kind of the difference, because I think, what Trinidad Chambliss did so well in this game was escape pressure, right? Georgia comes away with no sacks. And there were multiple times, man, where not only did they have him dead to rights and he escaped, but then he would hit him downfield with a big play. I mean, that drive where they, I think it's early fourth quarter drive where they got to the 10-point lead. Actually, excuse me, that was after the fumble, but the drive where they took the lead when it was 24-19, that drive, I mean, he does the Johnny Manziel, goes almost all the way back to his goal line, hits Lacey kind of in the flat for a first down, and then a couple plays later, he gets flushed. The route breaks off, it's total ad lib, and he hits, I think it was Shriveling down the sideline, or it might have been what's his name, Harrison Wallace, for like a 30 plus 40-yard gain. And you're just like, man, like there's no defense for that, right? There's no defense you can play. Same thing again, like those are unscripted. Well, how about a couple scripted plays when Georgia did fumble, which Kirby said in the post game they weren't meant to snap it there, which makes sense why the left tackle just didn't get off the ball and Perkins completely blew by him unblocked on the blind side. But after that fumble, Ole Miss has a 3-point lead. I think they ran it with Lacey on first down, and then second down, boom, back shoulder, exactly where it needs to be. Again, no defense for that, right? If you're playing man-to-man defense, you can't defend that play, and it's a touchdown. Ole Miss goes up 10. And then the one at the end of the game, right? Georgia ties the game. Great stand, by the way, by Ole Miss defense inside the 10 to hold them to a field goal and, save their season. And then they run it again on first down. Kind of strange, right? No timeouts, under a minute remaining. They run it up the gut with Lacey. And then second down, they hit that kind of wheel over the top. Perfect ball in stride. Again, Georgia's like, I guess you could say, hey, got to cover better, but the guy was right there. I mean, he didn't score a touchdown. They didn't blow the coverage. He just dropped it in a bucket right in Shribling's hands. And as you said, they got a good field goal kicker. Boom, they're in field goal range. It's a great game, back and forth. Yeah, no negatives to take away for Georgia. Just, you got by basically a heroic quarterback performance. I mean, even after the game, I'm sure you saw it, but Tim Tebow was like, this is the best quarterback performance we've seen in the playoff era, which is now over 10 years. And again, could be recency bias. I'm not certainly going to remember all the, quarterback performances off the top of my head. Deshaun Watson may have something to say about it, but it's definitely up there. Again, especially with all the circumstances surrounding this game.
Trevor Lawrence, national title game, Alabama.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. I mean, there's some recency bias there, but it was definitely up there. I mean, I think it's a top 5 performance in college football playoff history.
Yeah. And, our friend Mike Huseman here, just to close us out before we touch on a few other things, but he says he's rooting for Sig to win a title. And so I will say, like you, boss man, I'm rooting for Ole Miss. My best friend went to Ole Miss. He was completely losing his mind last night, especially when the game wouldn't end. He's texting me. He's like, how is the game still going? What's happening? Why does Georgia have the ball? Losing his mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, that aside, I do hope the matchup is Indiana Ole Miss, because whoever would win at that point, the story is incredible, right? Sig, Indiana, Mendoza, we've already discussed that. And then the Ole Miss thing. and it's not just with the Kiffin stuff and the Golding taking over, but also, again, to give Trinidad Chambliss his flowers. Dude, he was in Division II. Ferris State, not FCS. Division II. Like, again, might as well have been playing football in Moron Mountain. And now he's, now he's potentially, right, he's at least in the semis. But if that storyline were to play out, he wins a national title, it would be phenomenal. So I hope we get an Indiana Ole Miss title game. So that way, whoever wins, it's something we've never seen before. And it's an incredible story in college football. And yeah, hats off to Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss Rebels. I mean, Kawan Lacey is a warrior, dude. His shoulders falling off of his body. He's got the brace on, and he ran hard, man. Like I loved that game. I loved that performance from Ole Miss. And I can't lie, I am sad in a way. It sounds crazy because Georgia's just been there so much, but I liked watching this Georgia team with Stockton, and they were just, it was just a kind of a vintage Georgia team, right? Where obviously they're talented, obviously they have a ton of guys everywhere, but their quarterback, it's not that Stockton and gosh, I'm blanking on Stetson Bennett are the same, but man, in a lot of ways they are. They're both from Georgia. There's sort of mixed opinions about how good they are. They're both very scrappy, tough. They can run, and they find ways to win. And it felt like Georgia was going to find ways to win, and ultimately they just came up short at the last minute. So I'm going to miss the 2026 Georgia Bulldog team, the iteration of that squad. But I'm going to enjoy the heck out of the 2026 Rebels, at least for one more game.
Yeah, no, that game, we don't have to belabor the point here, but it was a war. The game was a war. And as fans, just no dog in the fight here. That was so much fun to watch. Back and forth. Both these teams were physical. The blitzes, sacks, huge hits. Gunnar Stockton getting back up, just touchdown right after a massive hit. He gets blown up again later in the game. He just keeps coming back. Trinidad Chambliss just keeps making plays. The whole Kawan Lacey, it was an awesome game to watch. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm gonna miss it. I think we get another year of Gunnar Stockton. Am I right? I think he's not done. No. Yeah, one more. So
eligibility is a figment of our imagination anyway. So
not even real. Yeah, not real. So he might be back for another 3 years for all we know. But I'm excited to watch Gunnar Stockton next year. I'm excited about this Georgia team next year. I think Georgia is going to be very good again, and I think that they're going to be right back in the national title conversation. I mean, it's the classic stuff, right? Couple inches, couple bounces the ball your way, Georgia wins this game. I mean, they scored 34 points, right? They were literally right there in this game. And so I think with Gunnar Stockton at the helm and Kirby Smart still there, on this roaming the sidelines in Athens, Georgia's going to be right back again there next year. And I'm excited to watch it. Yeah, I love Gunnar Stockton, man. He's the Friday Night Lights. He's the Remember the Titans quarterback that you want. He's just gritty. He gets the job done for the most part. And I'm not a Georgia fan or anything, but I would love to see Gunnar Stockton win a national title, man. I love that kid. I love what he's about. I love his moxie, love his grit. And he just puts his head down and gets to work, man. He's an old country boy. And he just, as we talked about with Ellie Mae a couple weeks ago. Yep. So I really like Gunnar Stockton.
Agreed. Yeah, he does give off Mike Winchell vibes, Friday Night Lights, Permian, Mojo.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, let's real quick. Why don't we close out with the portal stuff? Since we're just talking all this ball, we can just, again, we're going to go more in depth on these on next Wednesday on our typical time, back in regular rhythm Wednesday night shows. But do you have any just first thoughts on these games? Anything you want to touch on before we move over to the portal?
Just a little bit. I think I'll touch on Indiana and Oregon, and I'll let you touch on Miami and Ole Miss. So I'm just fascinated. First of all Saban acolytes now coaching in the semifinal. pretty unbelievable. Pretty cool to see that. The Saban method works, right? I mean, it's the process, baby. The process, tried and true, and won 7 national titles for Coach Saban, and is going to start winning national titles for some of these other guys as well. Indiana and Oregon, I'm fascinated to see. It's the easy thing to go to, but it's like this Oregon offense against the Indiana defense. Like Indiana is just stout, solid on defense. Don't beat themselves. Like you talked about earlier, they're always in the hole. They're extremely well prepared. They don't beat themselves with penalties. Oregon, one of the top scoring offenses in the country. We just watched them against Texas Tech. Texas Tech, very good defense. They had a little trouble. They had a lot of trouble against Texas Tech. Texas Tech just couldn't score the daggum ball. So what gives, right? Immovable object kind of thing. Is it going to be Indiana's defense that gives against this Oregon offense and the high-powered, offense of Dante Moore and the things that Oregon is able to do? Or does Indiana's defense just, maul them and overpower them, as they've been doing to just about everybody on their schedule all season long, including into the playoffs, as we just saw against Alabama? I trust Fernando Mendoza. I really trust him in this game. I mean, I know that folks were asking in our chat, is he a game manager? I think, Mike mentioned that. No, I don't think so. I mean, go back and watch that game, right? Okay, he only had to throw the ball 19 times or whatever it was, but he was making very accurate precision throws when he had to throw the ball. Very efficient. That's not a game manager to me. And not only that, but Indiana was running the ball so well, as you mentioned. If we don't have to throw the ball that much, we're just going to run it down your throat. Stop it. Good luck. And then once you do start to stop it, if you can, we're going to go to Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner. And he's been making precision throws all season long. Oregon has a very good defense as well. So I think this is going to be a fascinating matchup. I'm super excited to watch it. And I really love the way that both these teams play football. And, for the last thing to say here, and then I'll let you get into Miami and Ole Miss. Both of these coaches are just gritty, right? Prepared, gritty, from the Saban tree. They're both, the camera cuts to him. Lanning's going to be a little bit crazier. He's going to go nuts all the time. Looks like he's taking shots of something before the game he's taking shots of Red Bull or something before every game. But at the same time, like, these guys are very disciplined. They're very much from that Saban tree. And so to watch them go head to head, with the way that both of their mentalities and the way that they've molded their teams in their image is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, on the other side, the Miami Ole Miss game, there's two things that really jump out at me about this matchup. First is the Ole Miss offensive line against this D-line. We have seen now 2 games in a row Miami's defensive line have their way with the opponent, and I worry about that for Ole Miss. So if that comes to fruition, will we see another heroic Trinidad performance where he's just able to Houdini his way out of it? Or, will they get home a little bit more and give him some trouble? On the flip side, we've been talking a lot about Carson Beck, how we've been impressed in the 2 games. I think they need more from him in this game. So can he step up? I think Ole Miss will be able to, at least get into the 20s. So can he do that? Obviously they just scored 24 on Ohio State. 7 of that was the defensive touchdown. And I'm not going to, bank on that coming in this game. So, I think Ole Miss can get into the 20s on them. Can Carson Beck, step up in a bigger way if they need him to? Those are the 2 things that kind of jump out to me about that matchup. But I do think on both sides of the bracket here, I think we're going to have good games. I think we're going to have some very good games. We saw the Indiana-Oregon game earlier in the year. Of course, it was in Eugene, so that's a little bit different being in Georgia at the Peach Bowl. But I expect that one to be pretty hard fought. And then Ole Miss, Miami, I think is going to shape up to be a war, honestly. I think both those teams, it's going to be physical. I'm just excited for it. I think we're going to get some really good games. So I'm pumped for both of these. Before we hop into the portal, I just wanted to highlight two things. So obviously we are college football experts here. So I'm going to flash up our our college football playoff predictions. We each have one team left, Indiana. Excuse me. I've got Oregon left.
Yeah.
So bravo to me. I got one side of the bracket somewhat right. And then you've just got Indiana left. So obviously, take everything we're saying here with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Hey, look, this is fan analysis here, as we have talked about when we first branded Biscuits SEC. It was fan analysis with an F in the front, fan analysis, because obviously we are not experts. But I will say this too: go look at all the experts and everybody that they were picking. Right, like this is not an easy business, man, picking all these games. So we like to have fun with it here. You want to clown us for it, that's fine. That's totally, we like to have fun with it. So I put up a clip of me talking about Texas Tech and how I was believing in Texas Tech, and they go out and put up an egg, so that's just college football, man. Yeah. Big old zero. It's college football. These kids are 18 to now 28 years old. And you never know what you're going to get. So that's what makes it fun, makes it unpredictable. It's chaos. It's college football. That's why it's so much fun.
Exactly. Well, speaking of chaos, transfer portal, of course, officially opened. Sort of has been open for weeks, although not officially, right? Players are, opting out of bowl games and putting forth their intent to enter the portal when it opened. Well, it has now officially opened, and we've got some big, dominoes, of course, out there. There's quite a bit of quarterbacks on the market. Cam Coleman, a big name, very big name that will garner a lot of attention and money. I've seen Texas and Texas A&M trying to get him on campus. So anyway, what did you want to hit on the portal? I know there was a couple teams maybe we wanted to highlight.
Well, there's just a ton going on. I mean, we're trying to keep up with it. Obviously, we put as much as we can in terms of the portal in the newsletter as to what's happening right now. Opening day today of the portal. So there was a flurry of kids entering, some names that we hadn't heard yet, including Ole Miss fans out there. If you hadn't heard yet, Austin Simmons entered the portal maybe 2 hours before we went live. So Austin Simmons now in the portal. He's going to be looking for a new home, which understandable, for sure. How things went. He was a consummate teammate this year, so all the credit in the world to him with how he handled the situation. There's been multiple pieces written on that, so well worth a Google if you want to read about that. But he's looking for a new home. I mean, that depends too. Trinidad Chambliss, maybe, does he get eligibility? Does he not? Does he go to LSU? Like, I hope not. Hopefully, if he does get eligibility, he stays at Ole Miss. We'll see. Who knows? But there was a couple teams that I did want to highlight out of the SEC just for kind of where we're at. It's kind of the numbers always jump off the page nowadays when, these kids start to jump in the portal. And there's always a couple teams that jump off the page in terms of numbers and how much turnover they're having on a roster. We've talked about it in previous years when Sam Pittman was the head coach at Arkansas. Oh my gosh, Arkansas has 30 kids in the portal. Arkansas has 40 kids in the portal. Like Mississippi State has 100 kids in the portal. Like, almost 2,000 FBS. It's just
feels like fake numbers.
It's just a joke. It's a joke. But the teams that I did want to highlight here, and I don't have exact numbers because it's changing by the hour, but Auburn right now has 30 kids in the portal. 2/3 of those kids are former blue chip recruits. So Alex Golesh right now on the Plains, he's having a little bit of trouble retaining talent, and maybe that's his strategy. I don't know. Maybe his strategy is to hell with it. Like, we're going to overhaul this whole thing. We're going to go into the portal, and I'm just going to start fresh with my guys, and we're going to get 3 years, right? 3 years, and then we're going to start recruiting out of high school. Then we'll backfill through the portal. Whatever his strategy is, I don't know yet, right? But there's 30 kids in the portal from Auburn, including some really big names: Malcolm Simmons, Cam Coleman, Deuce Knight, a 5-star quarterback of the future. Deuce Knight announced that he was going into the portal yesterday, I think. So a lot of turnover coming to Auburn. That's an interesting one to point out. Texas has some very surprising portal entrants, as we talked about pre-show. You've got 4, I think, running backs, including Trey Wisner, who was their starter going into the portal. A couple wide receivers going into the portal, including Parker Livingstone, starter, who announced he's going into the portal today. The starting linebacker is going into the portal. So just kind of like some head scratchers at Texas. Like, all right, if Texas is going to be really good next year, if Sark really has this thing rolling, like, okay, it was a tough year this year, but still went 9-3, had a shot to get into the playoff at the end of the day. And so next year you're thinking Arch Manning coming back. We got all these guys coming, whatever, like next year we're going to have a really good shot at making a run. And then you see these portal entrants and you're like, all right, hold on. What's going on in the locker room? What's going on with Sark? What's going on in Austin? It's a little odd right there. So that's one I wanted to point out. And there's 2 more just quickly to point out is LSU. There's not a whole lot of surprise here, but 20 plus entrants into the portal for LSU. Lane Kiffin, as he did at Ole Miss, like he's transfer portal heavy. And so I think that he's coming in there and just saying, none of you guys got it done under Brian Kelly. I don't care if you had 5 stars. I don't care how many stars were next to your name. None of you got it done. So they've had a couple kids who have re-signed. And so I think he's trying to get a nucleus, right? Like, let's re-sign some of these kids who we know are really dadgum good, who did produce last year. Let's get that nucleus. Let's keep that together. But everybody else, you can go whatever. We're going to, use our money to go find some kids out of the transfer portal. So 20 plus into the portal for LSU, including a lot along the offensive line, which, whatever, that offensive line was terrible this year. So maybe that doesn't matter. But again, big bodies, as we've talked about, offensive linemen come at a premium, not easy to find in the transfer portal, to build a line in the transfer portal and have them produce. So that's interesting. And then the final one to mention, and then I'll let you make some comments on a couple of these that I mentioned. Tennessee, also a little bit of head scratching, 20 plus in the portal, some big names, including Lance Hurd, the offensive tackle who was formerly at LSU, was a freshman at LSU, then transferred to Tennessee, been there the last 2 years, all SEC offensive lineman, goes into the portal. Like, why are we seeing him go into the portal? And a couple other interesting names as well out there on Rocky Top that you're just kind of like, really? Hurd to me potentially is one of those where you got agents, I don't know, family, whoever in your ear. And it's like, you're an all SEC offensive lineman, brother. You're going to command $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million. I don't know. You're going to command a lot of money on the open market. So why don't you test the waters, get some leverage? If you want to go back to Tennessee, maybe they pay you more money, or maybe you can get more money going somewhere else. Maybe that's what it feels like to me with him. But again, like Texas at Tennessee feeling like they have a good shot to be a really solid team next year and do better than they did this year. And you're seeing some of these guys who should be building blocks for that team in 2026 enter the portal. So those were just a couple that jumped off the page at me here as we kind of opened up the transfer portal today, and just kind of a couple head scratchers and just some numbers that jumped off the page.
Yeah. I'm not going to add anything on the portal entrance. I did just want to highlight 2. I hate that I'm even saying this, I guess, but guys who re-signed or are returning to school. Dallas Wilson at Florida,
yes,
is coming back. So that's a big get, I guess. A big retention for John Summerall. Because that kid can play,
especially like, just to mention, you said that like he doesn't have a quarterback, so like you got Dallas Wilson to commit to you, and he committed to the plan that you have in place to get a quarterback. So I just wanted to mention that because yes, it's a big get. 5-star receiver, had a great freshman campaign when he was able to play, when he wasn't hurt, and now he's recommitted to Florida without knowing who his quarterback is going to be. So a big first get for John Summerall and a building block he can build on. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a really good point, because it's not only new coach, new staff, new everything, but also no idea who your QB is going to be. So good to keep him on campus. In the few games that he played, he looked awesome. So props to Summerall there. The other one, I guess he probably would have gone pro, but Whit Weeks is coming back to LSU. I wasn't that surprised by it just because he just kind of seems like the all-American college player. Like he loves college. And he even said that in his, I'm coming back. He's like, college is too good to leave. And so,
and he's dating the coach's daughter, man. I mean, it's like, he's literally living the all-American life, like playing at a major college at LSU, his coach, he's dating the coach's wife, and the coach comes to his school and like, now we're going to go win a national title. It's like,
right. So anyway, he's coming back to school, which is another big one. Again, whether he would have entered the portal or just gone to the NFL, he's an all-American linebacker. So big. You brought up he's dating Kiffin's daughter, so probably wasn't that hard to convince him to not transfer. But either way, good for Kiffin and Blake Baker to keep that guy on campus because he's great. And their defense fell off when he got hurt down the stretch. They took a step back. So that's a big, returning player for the Tigers and kind of a building block, if you will, a tone setter for the Kiffin era for him to stick around. So, but that's about it. I think we can wrap up with our final two segments. So, we'll start with the Muschamp Coach of the Week. We're still toying with the potential of renaming it, but for now, it is still the Muschamp Coach of the Week until further notice. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We got over 400 of y'all tuned in. So if you're new around here, if you're just catching us because it's a new night or it's just end of the season, you're looking for all the ball talk you can get before the dreaded offseason kicks in 3 short weeks. The Muschamp Coach of the Week is something we do here every week. It's an homage, if you will, to Coach Muschamp, as we're big fans of his. Not so much anymore that he's the Texas DC, but have been big fans of his for a long time, simply because the way he carries himself and the way he is passionate. He's screaming, he's spits flying, he's bleeding, he's punching whiteboards, screaming at referees. He's just he's full of passion and energy, and we love that. And so we honor that each week here with the Muschamp Coach of the Week, who best displays that on the field or in a press conference or what have you. So you put this one together, so I'll let you intro the winner this week.
Well, as usual, especially when we got football going on, once we get into the offseason, it gets a little bit tougher. You got some press conferences you can pull from. You got some, baseball, some basketball, whatever that we can pull from. But during the season and now with playoff games going on, we got plenty of potential fodder and bowl games and everything, and coaches who could be nominees. So obviously this week, a couple coaches who for sure could be nominees, particularly Pete Golding. So the fact that Pete Golding is not winning it this week just tells you that there was somebody else who should absolutely get it. To me, that was the man. I think he may be a multi-time winner at this point now. We're going to have to go back and look and get our stats and info department to find out who has won the most Muschamp's coaches of the week, but he is up there now at this point. But Coach Signetti, Kurt Signetti, Sig, yep, smoke him if you got him. Kurt Signetti is the Muschamp Coach of the Week. And I put this video together. I didn't pull this from anybody. I made this, and I'm very proud of it. So please clap.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me. His production on the field, I'd like to see the percentage of that.
Holy moly. This is the worst hire in the history of football.
Look, man, we might be sitting here in 3 years and people are making fun of us because Cignetti's just lighting a cigar in Indianapolis, having beaten Ohio State.
He's lighting it cool.
Well, you're right.
He's got his cocktail, and he's drunker than hell at that press conference.
I got 2 things to say. Besides all the thank yous to the president, Pam Whitten, the AD, Scott Dawson, our assistant coaches, our team, our seniors, our fans, all right? We are Big Ten champions, and you talk about changing the way people think. I got 3.5 weeks to get this team humble and hungry for the playoffs.
You know about the Bama mystique. How do you convince the players that you're playing this team, you're not playing all that tradition?
You probably know more about the mystique than they do. I mean, our guys just know what they see on tape.
Look who you're.
What is it about the makeup of this group that they are able to, on this kind of stage with what's at stake, that the moment's not too big for them?
Well, I mean, why should it be too big? Because our name's Indiana.
So there it is, man. Curt Cignetti, he is the Muschamp Coach of the Week. So, yeah, buddy. Hope you got that good pack because he's been incredible at Indiana. And I put that together because I wanted to show a bit of the timeline of where we started to where we are today. Google me, I win. These clowns talking about he's the worst hire.
Was that an FSU war chant?
War chant.
Where was that coming from?
Oh, I don't know. I found it on Twitter somewhere. People have been dragging it up and digging it.
Okay.
Saying, oh, hey, check this out. And, so I wanted to put that in there, just where we started to where we are today with Cignetti, Indiana, just steamrolling people now in the College Football Playoff Semifinal and looking like a bona fide national title contender. And I wanted to put that right after, right? You get the war chant guys saying that, and people may be clowning us, years to come if they are smoking cigars after beating Ohio State, and then bam, beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Smoke them if you got them, baby. So yeah, Curt Cignetti, your Muschamp Coach of the Week. He will get his trophy in the mail, his certificate in the mail within the next 5 years, and I'm sure he will proudly display it when he goes on ESPN to tell everybody how good he is.
He absolutely will. Good stuff. That's a good video. I was clapping. So thanks for putting that together. All right. Well, thanks everybody for sticking with us. We got one more quick segment. Again, we do this every week. It's our biscuit of the week. We are Biscuits and SEC. So we love SEC football and we love biscuits and Southern food. So we like to feature a biscuit here once a week. If you want to be featured, shoot us a DM on social media. Send us an email. We love featuring fan biscuits. Rick, I know we got one from you in the hopper, so that will be coming soon, but we didn't get to it this week because we had a triple, or I should say I had a triple-decker biscuit, not personally, but we had 3 biscuits the other day. We were back back for Christmas at our parents' outside of Charlottesville, and we went to mountains there where our parents live, went to Nellysford, Virginia, to Belty's Farm Cafe, named after the Belted Galloway cows. And they actually had like 4 cows just on the other side of the red barn, but they had some really good biscuits. So I went there with my wife and my parents, and everybody got a biscuit. So we got 3 of them here. Your far left, you're looking at a classic sausage, egg, and cheese. The one in the middle is the one I had, which was just a fried chicken, patty with pickles, Duke's mayonnaise, and cheese. And then the far right, I think, is the one that took the cake. So that is a pimento cheese, fried green tomato, fried chicken with arugula. And there was some like blackberry jam on that fried green tomato one as well. So I was regretting my order as soon as I saw the fried green tomato and pimento cheese fried chicken sandwich, but phenomenal. Nellysford, Virginia, probably not on anyone's list to visit, but if you do find yourself in the area, it's a nice little town just down the road from our parents. And this place rules. Belty's Farm Cafe is phenomenal. You can go pet some cows, let your kids run around with cows while you eat a fat chicken biscuit slathered in mayonnaise and pimento cheese. So it's good stuff.
I don't think any of those 3 options look bad at all to me. So I was regretting the fact that I did not go with you guys to get these as soon as I saw the pictures and heard about the petting cows. But the middle one, to me, I thought the middle one was going to take the cake. The pimento cheese, and I don't know what all you said was on that, but it looks incredible. But then you started describing the fried green tomato one. I was like, okay, got it, done. Yep, that's the one.
Well, the middle one, which is the one I had, we were there at breakfast time, and it doesn't have an egg or anything on it. So it was literally just a fried chicken filet with mayonnaise and pickles and cheese. So didn't quite have the breakfast and didn't have the fried green tomato pimento cheese combo, which I was jealous of. So, I mean, again, all of them very good. If I had to go back, I would get the one in the middle at lunch, and I would get the a different one for breakfast.
That makes sense. Well, good segue here. Duke's Mayo on that biscuit that you had. Duke's Mayo Bowl, I think, happening as we speak right now. So I think it's time for us to get out of here. Let everybody go watch the impressive and fun Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Absolutely. It is happening. Wake Forest is currently winning 8-3 over your Mississippi State Bulldogs. So sorry to pick against Mississippi State, but I picked Wake Forest to cover. So based on my bowl picks so far, I believe I'm like 2-18 or something. It's like the worst. I don't even know how it could be that bad. So I really need Wake Forest to cover this 3.5 point spread.
Yeah, you should not have picked how you did. You picked terribly. So,
I mean, it's an all-time horrendous run. I don't even know how it's possible. Yeah, really pathetic stuff. So anyway, we'll get out of here on that one. Go watch the Duke's Mayo Bowl and fade any picks that I give out between now and the end of the season. But thank y'all for tuning in. Again, we got over 400 of y'all tonight, so that's great on a Friday night, not our normal showtime. We are typically here Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central. We roll through the off season, so if you like what you see, we'll be here talking about Lord knows what. And we'll obviously be here through the rest of the playoffs. So we will give a more kind of in-depth preview show next Wednesday leading into the semis, which I believe kick off Thursday. And again, just thanks for tuning in, everybody. We do a newsletter twice a week right now for free. If you're interested, sign up. Keep you up to date on all the goings on in the SEC and around the country. And would love if you guys would subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, and just, that's the best way to support us. We're growing this thing. And like I said, we'll be here all off season. So if you like what you see, tune back in. We'd love to have you. But with that, I think we will sign off and see y'all Wednesday. Appreciate y'all.
See you guys next week. Thanks.